The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is a stupendous fantasy RPG released in 2015 by CD Projekt Red, based on the series of novels by Andrzej Sapkowski. Critically adored for its open world, graphics, and a dozen other things, but no quality stands out quite like its storytelling. It's got a great story. The story is so good. I keep hearing that, but seldom ever seen much in-depth examination as to why. So now this is happening. And with this series, I'm going to talk about everything. The whole of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt and its expansions. We'll talk the first two games and the books, how its characters grow, what its story has to say, and how it says it. This game set a high bar for its genre in terms of storytelling. Let's look at why. There are hundreds of characters, a political landscape as complex as Game of Thrones, magic, fairy tales, prophecies, mutants, interdimensional travel. It's a lot. And so, like the game itself, we're going to do this in baby steps, going through the game in order. And like any good RPG worth its salt, that starts with a big CGI cinematic. Things kick off with recent history. This is a time of war. We see a sorceress in flight, we see a hero on our trail. That's all we need for now. Because it's time for introductions, as the game takes us into Geralt's dreams. He's in the bath, bearing his soul's... But really, they couldn't have picked a more perfect way to introduce us to Geralt of Rivia. And while this image would spawn its very own meme, it's actually super significant that we see Geralt like this. Naked, vulnerable, relaxed. There will be dozens of hours to show how badass and stoic he is. What the game needs to do right now is show that he's human, and most vital of all, what matters to him. First we meet Yennefer, Geralt's long-time on and off lover. We get a taste of their unique dynamic. Yennefer toying with him, Geralt being uncharacteristically giddy for her. Next we meet Vesemir, who it should be noted is also sleeping, and the old Witcher has let their ward Ciri run off. Vesemir and Geralt are equals in a lot of ways, the two joking and understanding each other, but it's clear from Vesemir's greater experience and his reverence for old school Witcher teaching that he's the senior of the two. Next we meet Ciri, Geralt's ward, though adopted daughter is more apt. In the space of this introduction, we've taken Geralt from a lover to a son to a father, and it's a great way to brush off the stiffness of his character in the previous games and establish him as a dynamic figure. Ciri's introduction is almost as important as Geralt, since, as we'll get to later, she's essentially the main character of this whole series, and right away we've seen her as capable and independent. Better yet, when she proves she actually did read the book Vesemir assigned her, and made time for sword practice, we get our first hint that she's perfectly able to manage on her own. But it's Geralt and the player's option to acknowledge her capability that hints at the importance of their relationship in the present. Anyway, all this happy gathering is brought to an abrupt end by the arrival of the Wild Hunt, the mysterious foes from the books. While readers will know them as elves from another world, a world where elves weren't conquered by humans, for new players they'll be no more than some heavy metal looking bastards. The important thing right now is the threat they pose to Ciri and Geralt's fear of losing her. Once Geralt awakes, he elaborates on the nature of the dream, picking out reality from imagination, like how Yennefer never visited the Witcher's home of Kaer Morhen, and the appearance of the Wild Hunt obviously didn't actually happen. Though he still believes it's a vision, a sign Ciri, wherever she is in danger. This scene around the campfire with Vesemir is quietly one of the most important conversations in the entire game, with Geralt's dream foreshadowing the events to come at Kaer Morhen, and Vesemir's response setting up the role he'll play in it. Stick a pin in this though, because we'll be coming back to this much later in the series. Soon enough, you're fighting monsters and back on the road, soon to arrive in White Orchard. And White Orchard is The Witcher 3 in miniature, a perfect re-encapsulation of what it has to offer. These early interactions are what outline the place of Witchers in this world, something that will come back to again and again. They're outsiders, distrusted and looked down upon, but capable when it comes to that whole monster slaying business, so largely tolerated. The merchant you rescue on the road from a bloodthirsty griffin expects to have to pay for his rescue, making a clear distinction. Witchers aren't heroes, they're professionals. Of course, the player is immediately given the option to refuse payment, and whether it's selected or not, this is a glimpse at who Geralt is. Plenty of work for Witchers in a time of war, and we're in the midst of the Third Northern War. In this clash, the Kingdom of Temeria, the main setting of the games, is essentially no more, absorbed by the Empire of Nilfgaard. It's a sore spot for the people who have lost their identity, and are now faced with living under the rule of the forces they've been fighting for generations. From the moment we arrive in White Orchard, the sense we're standing in a powder keg never quite goes. These people are itching for a fight, and a bunch of mutant monster slayers are prime targets. Geralt and Vesemir keep talking about staying out of things and just sticking to the mission to find Yennefer. It's this very intention that drives them right back into the thick of things, with the key to our whereabouts lying in the hands of the local garrison, and the garrison's officer ain't handing over nothing until Geralt slays the Griffin. And our first impressions of the Nilfgaardian officer are unexpected. These hostile invaders seem remarkably considerate, accommodating a farmer who can't meet the needs of their forces. The Witcher flexes its flair for the subversive here, because this is a trick it'll do again and again. Nothing is ever quite as it seems. And as we take on the Griffin contract, we'll probably take on some small side quests too, and each one is a little taste of what's to come. Families torn apart, tales of prejudice and tragedy as well as humour. They're not the game's best or most complex quests, but they let you know what you're in for, the kind of work a Witcher is expected to do, and the kinds of themes that are going to recur. The quest with the Dwarven Smith stands out, because it's an easy quest. Finding that arsonist takes so little effort, the quest basically acts as a tutorial. Yet once you hand him over, he's hanged. No trial, no redemption. The Arson's Prejudice Act is also regarded as treason. It's a swift, unexpected result. Surprises continue when we find the cause of the Griffin's bloodlust. Some soldiers killed its mate, slaughtered the young. Now the surviving Griffin is justifiably enraged. In The Witcher, even monsters aren't without understanding, and while Geralt surveys the crime scene of its nest with cold professionalism, there's a hint of sympathy throughout. This did not need to happen. Preparations done, Geralt and Vesemir tackle the Griffin together, and once again we see Vesemir as the senior of the two, critiquing Geralt's technique, even now. When Geralt returns for the pay, however, things take a turn. That seemingly decent Nilfgaardian officer is furious. The farmer he'd been lenient on before has delivered spoiled grain. It's all they have. But no excuse is good enough, and he's sentenced to lashings. And then we are asked to choose whether we accept payment from the officer or not. No matter which the player chooses, the man gets his lashings. Back at the tavern, trouble's brewing. Tensions have sent the locals at each other's throats till our witchers are forced to intervene, and so despite their best efforts to remain uninvolved, they're knee-deep. They've worked with the invaders, helped the village, and now cut some of its locals to bits. Should Geralt have stayed out of it, let one innocent woman get beaten to spare the lives of several others? Geralt did the right thing, but the consequences are messy, and this is a warning to players before the hundreds of hours ahead. No good deed goes unpunished.